Okay, do you want to say something on the points you've just raised then? First of all, thanks. I'm sorry if we're a bit late coming. We were at Pudsey earlier on. On the whole general issue on education, the philosophy behind what we're doing is to set up a national education service. And I want that national education service to be the legacy of the next Labour government in the way that the National Health Service was the legacy of the 1945 to 51 Labour government. The principle of education as a right, not a privilege, as a right, not a commodity. Because anyone that looks at education as you all do will know that the preschool is increasingly privatised, post-16 is increasingly privatised, and within schools itself there's a high degree of privatisation through academies and free schools. And that creates with it a whole problem of the governance and the ability of a local authority, a local education authority, to intervene or give any kind of support to schools because of the break-up in the school system, which isn't good. And our National Education Service is designed to create the overarching principle of education that's free at all points, cradle to grave. And so that means free nursery places for 2 to 4 year olds. And we are looking with a great deal of interest at what Finland and other Scandinavian countries do preschool, and also what they do in the early years of primary school, where some schools in England I think become over-academic too soon. I think children need to develop the socialisation as much as anything else in the early years of school, because that actually helps them to develop so they do better after that. And proper funding of primary schools is obviously key, because clearly if head teachers have got to spend their whole time worrying their heads about funding and which teachers to get rid of and which subjects not to do and which things not to do, then clearly it's quite hard to concentrate on what they're doing. Secondly, as a general principle, I'm very concerned about the principle of league tables and the growth of competition between schools. I find it, when I pick up my own local paper and they produce these endless league tables of the 40 or so primary schools in my borough, I just get annoyed by that. Because parents then turn up at my office a week later saying, why is my kid going to St. X school when they should be going to so-and-so, which is clearly doing better? Obviously, there's a whole lot of stories behind every one of those issues, but it just is debilitating for the parents, debilitating for the teachers, and makes life very, very difficult for head teachers. Surely it ought to be the principle that we're there for all children and to support all children. I was pleased that somebody, I forget which topic it was, mentioned the questions of exclusions from school, which is what I find quite alarming. Now, I fully recognise that some students can be extremely difficult. We all know that. But excluding from school, putting in a PRU, too often you've actually assigned a career-threatening path for that student. You might have a 14, 15-year-old who's in a very, very difficult situation. There might be lots and lots of reasons why they're in a difficult situation, but too often they end up actually virtually leaving the whole education system at that age, and it's very hard to get them back later on in life. And so I wanted to look at that as well. The question of how we develop the imagination in children is something that I feel very keenly and very strongly about. The last election manifesto was an absolutely brilliant document, but it was written in 2 weeks. something we would normally give ourselves 3 years to write. We wrote in 2 weeks, and it's to the huge credit of Andrew Fisher and all his team that we got the book we did, for the many, not the few, out in that period of time. We included the National Education Service in it because it was in my original leadership bid in 2015, and that's where the idea came from, and we want to flesh it out. And so Angela Rayner and I have been discussing this. We realise that there are areas that need to be looked at quite carefully. The relationship with colleges, the relationships with the universities, the role of the voluntary sector in nursery education. There's a whole lot of areas that have got to be looked at and worked out. It doesn't have to be a big fight about it. I think we can come to a pretty good consensus in the party on an awful lot of this. And so we're arranging an education conference style event in Birmingham in the early part of this year, which will be designed to give voice to anyone that wants to come along on those views, but also take it online and take it through party processes as well, so we get the details of it right. The points that you made about art education, I feel very, very strongly about. I'm not musical, but I enjoy music, and once a year I give myself an evening off and I go to the proms at Royal Albert Hall, and I love it. I love the music and all that. I really enjoy it. When I get home, I read the programme. Page after page after page is advertisements of private schools all over the country saying how good they are at music, and I'm sure they are good at music. I don't doubt it. And then I go to my own local secondary schools or secondary schools all over the country, and the first question I always ask them, what music teaching do you do in the school? Usually, if they know I'm coming and they know the question, they kind of big up the answer. Well, we really do a great deal. We do far more than the school across the road. Well, I wasn't asking what they did across the road. I was asking about you, actually. But if they don't expect the question from me, it's often a very sad answer. We used to do it. We've had to get rid of the music teacher, or the music teacher only comes one day a week, and so on and so on. It's absurd, because at every level, our children should be given the opportunity to develop their musical and artistic and creative abilities. It actually helps them in all other subjects as well anyway. And so we are going to put in a ring-fenced pupil arts premium. The principle behind it, that every child should have the chance to learn a musical instrument in school. I got the idea from Faith Primary School in Liverpool, which is supported by Liverpool Philharmonic. It's fantastic what they've achieved musically, and every school could do that. Look at La Sistema in Venezuela, what they've achieved through music. Look at places that have done it in an imaginative way. It will also mean that by ring fencing it, the schools will be able to spend that money, yes, on musical instruments and musical teaching in school, but also on art and theatre. It could be a way of spending some money in local theatres, which the schools use those theatres, and that in turn changes the dynamic of theatres in this country. It does not then become the preserve of the affordable middle classes. It becomes the preserve of everybody who as a kid, went to the theatre as a kid, might continue to go later on in life. So I'm very, very keen to achieve that. Last couple of things, very quick things. Two things I want to say.
You'll be late for your another speech.
This is a problem I often face. Just two other things I want to say. In the last election, we took the big decision that we'd spend £9 billion on paying for university fees for all students, and that will be in the next election manifesto. I'm absolutely determined that will be the case. Again, the principle of free education. But there's also an issue about training and apprenticeships and real parity of esteem in what goes on in further and higher education. And so I'm very keen that we should make it very clear to all young people, doing an apprenticeship, getting a qualification is as good as going to university. You're just as valuable to society. You need electricians and plumbers just as much as you need various academic courses. That has to be achieved. Last thing, because I know you want me to go or stop or something, or you want me to do what I'm not doing now, is the question of issues of mental health and stress. And thank you for what you said. It must be very difficult for you to talk about it, and thank you for the way you put it. I went to a school near me recently where one of the pupils committed suicide. I knew the girl, actually. I knew her and I knew her parents, and it was, in obvious, as you would understand, obvious ways, totally tragic. The school hadn't been bad in any way. They'd done everything they possibly could, and I don't blame the school for it at all. It was an unbelievable tragedy. Over the whole country, the numbers of young people going through serious levels of stress that A, are frightened to talk to their schoolmates about it because of the stigmas attached to it, B, sometimes frightened to tell their parents of the stresses that they're going through, and C, don't know where to go and don't know what to do about it. Also applies in colleges and universities. Mental health stress is a product of many things. Some of it is the stresses in our society, but not all, some of it. But there is no solution in not properly funding mental health services. There's no solution in every school not having the resources they need to have a person responsible for ensuring there are adequate mental health and counselling support services throughout the school or throughout the college. The biggest killer of young men in our society is those taking their own lives and under the age of 40, and that is surely a warning call to all of us. We managed to get the Health and Social Care Act amended to include parity of esteem between physical and mental health. Unfortunately, it's a Tory government that doesn't actually carry out that parity of esteem. I've appointed a shadow minister dealing solely with social care and mental health, because I believe it's that serious and that important. They should be around the cabinet dealing with it. I'm absolutely determined that we should achieve that. And so what I hope you can do on all the thoughts you've got on education is put them down, send them in, put them on our website, send them in through Angela's office or through the policy unit in our party head office, because the strength of our next manifesto will be the strength of members' feelings and the strength of members' ideas about how we can make this national education service a reality. And I'm very proud of what we did so far, but I'm determined now to win an election to carry it out. Thank you very much.